Very unfortunate we don't have a chance to see you. The value of this European Microfinance Week, of course, has always been the connection and having you in front of us. This time it's not possible, but thanks for the team to make this possible technically. Welcome to this session about reaching the 7th dimension, green finance, and the universal standards for social performance management. My name is Jürgen Hammer. For those who don't know me, I am managing the SPTF European office in Luxembourg, focusing mainly on the work and the coordination of the investor activity. My panelists, David Forcella and Gerd Schuite, will use this next half hour to give you an update on the work we are currently doing on green. Just as a word of introduction, when extra financial reporting and evaluation started in microfinance, for many years it focused on social, as this was seen as the priority for an industry that was targeting poor and excluded populations in the world. For a long time, a concerted effort on the environmental dimension was missing in microfinance, even though there have been many individual initiatives, and in particular, since 2013, the European Microfinance Platform had created the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Action Group as a think tank on environmental issues. That reflected that the recognition and the belief that green and the environment were relevant for microfinance. The action group had created the Green Index, later updated to the Green Index 2.0, that was integrated into the universal standards and the SPI as a voluntary model, in addition to the 6 dimensions on social performance. Over the past years, it has become increasingly obvious that addressing environmental issues in the context of responsible finance was not only becoming urgent, considering the increasingly threatening observations about climate change, but also relevant for microfinance. For this reason, in the context of SPTF's current works on revising the universal standards to assure their coherence and their adaptation to an evolving industry, but also to growing demand from investors and from financial service providers, SPTF has decided to elevate the current voluntary model to a full dimension 7 of the universal standards. The SPTF has created a working group in cooperation with the action group and hired a technical expert in the person of Gerd Schuite to coordinate that work. The work is building on 2 blocks. On one hand, analyzing the user experience of our current tools, the Green Index and the Green Module, but also a full overview and industry update to make sure that what we are doing now reflects and aligns to the best possible level to the ongoing learnings in the larger industry. I would like to pass it on now to my 2 panelists, who will explain more in detail the process and the current state of this cooperation project. So please go ahead, Gerd. Sorry, I think it's David.
I think you are on mute, Davide.
I'm mute. So I was saying some wonderful things, and unfortunately, everyone missed those. Okay, so I will say thanks a lot for this great introduction. I think it's really laying the ground to the work we are doing and what we try to achieve all together. And I would like to tell you, before passing the word to Gerd, that we'll try to summarize where do we stay. I mean, how this joint effort with the action group and the SPTF is arrived, and what are the preliminary conclusions. What I would like to tell you is a bit where did we stand, what has been done so far, and what has been the process to reach this conclusion. So, look, my name is Davide Forcella. I'm heading since a while the action group for Green Inclusive Finance, the European Microfinance Platform, now together with Natalia Realpe, that is here with us. And I'm also head of business development in Yapu Solution, as you see here below, here behind, as well as responsible of the green finance for the company. So the action group, as said, has been founded in 2013. Due already back in time, I would like to give you some background of that. This is not new, green. Back in time already, we have the observation on the ground from consultancy work, from academic studies, from many reporters directing with discussion with MFIs, that something green was already going on. So there was the idea to say, okay, let's see what's happening in the field, and let's understand, if there is a meaning to bring all these various experience together, so that we can generate a common understanding of what green means, how eventually the environmental performance could be assessed, and how the microfinance institution as well as investors could be supported, to improve this dimension. So our effort from the very beginning was really to try to have an approach that is, bottom up. So look what the field is doing, and learn from them. And so there in 2013, we have been founding, I was not part of the group at the beginning, so with Microenergy International, Planet Finance, ADA, inside the European Microfinance Platform, have been founding this group. And since that is very active, the idea of this group was really to bring together, experiences and generate common standard knowledge and tools. And one of the main tools that has been found in 2014 was this Green Index. The Green Index was exactly the idea to be able to structure what the institution is already doing in a coherent framework. Since then, I've been working quite a lot, and the action group is nowadays, composed of 60+ members, that has 40+ institutions. That I think is very precious, is what has brought us this collaboration with SPTF, saying that we do not try to bring, the idea of one kind of stakeholder or an expert idea, but we try to generate, and structure together our common understanding. So we have investors, academics, consultants, IT companies, etc., that are part of the group. So maybe a couple of words. As part of this work we are doing with SPTF, it was really the idea to say, okay, let's see what do we know so far. Because we would like now that the idea is to bring really the green dimension to a standard. It's very important to, to grab together what we know. And we be observing that the number of activities in the last years has been extremely increasing, as well as the depth of the understanding of microfinance institutions. Still is not mainstream, that's clear. Still is not scale, still is not institutionalized green. But if you would compare what institutions are doing now, and I invite you to join other green panels, compared to what was happening 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, there is clearly, an important trend. So as part of our review, we have been also observing that there were various studies, as well as basically already done nowadays more than 700, 800 social environmental performance, and we will have a publication on that so that everyone is aware to say, okay, what has been learned so far. We are compiling database since 2011 till now, and we target, I think 1,000+ environmental assessments. And from there, we say, okay, we need to bring that forward. So to bring that forward, our process was we joined forces with SPTF, and then we try to look in the field. So through database, we start running a survey. So some of you probably have received a link for a survey for investors, to know your opinion, what you think is relevant to be measured, as well as we are doing the same thing with MFI. We are running extensive interviews, both with MFI, investors, other actors, part or not part of the action group. We are also running various training and seminars exactly to try to collect this information. Before giving the word to Gert, I maybe would like to tell you, I mean, what through this process we reach. Yeah, a couple of words. So the green indices is today, as Furkan told us, is already the version 2. So it's already undergoes, you know, there was a first preparation. We structure this green index, what we call green index 1.0, according to what had been seen back in 2013. And then we use it for 2 years already. After this 2 years, we had the full review, really, with all the stakeholders that contribute to use it, to implement it, etc. We were working back in time with the mixed market to run an extensive survey with MFIs to understand what is possible to be tracked, what is interesting to be tracked, what does make means, what do we value if something is missing or not, and out of that was built this green index 2.0. But the 2.0 is the present version that is included as dimension 7 optional in the SPI 4 of CERISE, and the structure of 4 dimensions. I will just spend 2 words, and then I invite you. There is a training just after this speech, exactly on the green index. So everyone is invited to, you know, to participate if you want to know details, how to assess environmental performance, etc. But in a nutshell, so I've been structuring the environmental performance through basically 4 axes. One is environmental strategy. Yeah, if the institution is able to state a strategy, a mission, a policy, and eventually how to achieve it. Risk, we have 2 parameters. Yeah, internal risk. That means, is the institution polluting through his own activity, you know, use of paper, use of water, energy, etc. So is it measuring this? And then is it doing some activity to reduce this impact? Yeah? And then is it able to report on this achievement? That is internal environmental risk. And then there was external environmental risk, as probably many of you know. The great impact that the financial institution has, of course, is not through his own activity, but it's through the activity finance. So that's, you know, is a huge impact potentially. So the external environmental risk measure what are the activities that the institution is financing and how that could negatively or positively impact the environment. Yeah. So there in this dimension is the institution assessing the environmental risk of the activities it finances. Is it then managing this risk? So it's doing something out of the information. Does it has, you know, some tools or some strategy to reduce this risk and is able to report the progress? Yeah? And then, of course, the 4th dimension was one that is in the heads of many of us when we start. Of course, it's opportunity. So it means we call the green opportunity. That means, does the institution has any green products? And there we divide the green product into financial and non-financial product. So of course, like loans is the best, I mean, the most diffuse things we have in our mind. So for example, loans to finance clean energy. Yeah, was divided into clean energy and non-clean energy. So to finance clean energy. The other dimension was to finance sustainable agriculture, yeah, as well as adaptation to climate change. And then the other one is to finance any other kind of activity that is neither in these 2 big dimensions, means, for example, recycling, waste management, etc. And then we have other 2 indicators, that is, does the institution provide trainings? I mean, does the institution enable his client to implement such product? Because as we know, you know, you need capacity to do that correctly, as well as it's providing other non-financial services, like, for example, non-loans, like being microinsurance, climatic microinsurance, or other stuff. So before closing, what we observe while using the Green Index 2.0 since 2016, and now with the review we're doing the SPTF, there were 2 main challenges, I will say. One, it has been quite used for assessing the environmental performance of an institution, but not so much to define, you know, what can be done next. Yeah, to use this assessment has been used to assess, to generate awareness, and to monitor, but not to say, okay, I'm here, what could I do to go in this other stage? Yeah, and there we had a lot of requirement from MFIs to say, okay, I need to have more material indicators in terms of how many loans I'm doing compared to what my peer could do, yeah, and what this institution has been done to achieve this amount of green loans, yeah. So one key element will be in the next version to also foster more quantitative indicator that was already inside the 2.0, but has not really been used to define strategies. So how many clean energy loans compared to peers, you know, and what is, you know, an achievement that you can do with a reasonable effort. And then the second thing that we've been looking quite in detail in this work together with the SPTF, and I mean, in Yapo as a company, I manage is something that we've been looking since quite long, is that there was a dimension that was missing. I mean, at least it's our perception, and we would like to engage in discussion with you if you share the same view. So Gert will tell you more about that, but in a nutshell, it is quite a lot of do not harm the environment. Nevertheless, the financial institution is a lot about manages risk. Yeah, manages risk basically manages its credit risk. And nowadays, due to the unfortunately the situation in which we are, climate change is bringing an increasing risk within the portfolio of the institution. So this is what we call that, you know, is the vulnerability of clients as well as portfolio to environmental degradation, to climate change. So this dimension of how much the client is vulnerable to climate change, and then how much the portfolio of the institution is vulnerable to climate change. Am I able to measure it? Can I do something to offset? Can I recognize that this climatic risk is part of my credit risk, and then I need to do something to eventually offset, and when I offset it, eventually I want to do without destroying the environment. Yeah, so basically promoting the environment, for example, you know, through, for example, okay, I'm affected by droughts, okay, and that is a risk for the clients, and then for the portfolio, so then eventually I can measure, I can see what are opportunities to offset, like drip irrigators, etc., and then I reduce this risk through a green loans. That was a dimension clearly missing. That is not only for climate change, of course, but for other main threats like biodiversity losses, productivity loss, energy poverty, etc. So this is where we stand. I think we pass the word to Gert, that I believe is going to tell you from all the things I told you, how can we synthesize where we stand and what are the next steps.
Thanks, Davide. And maybe just to add to that, that phase of analyzing the current experience and the current experience of the tools, of course, includes also a very important contribution by CERISE. As mentioned before, the Green Index is a module of the SPI. About 25% of all the SPI evaluations have also filled out the voluntary green module. So CERISE also contributes in the steering committee of this work, and the contribution and the sharing of that analysis of data out of the CERISE database, of course, constitutes an important element in defining the learnings first of all, and where we have to move on. So now I pass it to you, Gert.
Exactly. Sorry, Gert. One thing, because probably I did not recognize enough the work also done with CERISE. Maybe let's say one word. So since we developed the Green Index 1.0, that was already integrated in the SPA4 basically since 2014, or in the first one, because we thought that no matter what we develop, should be a tool that is aligned to what the industry recognizes standard. So that has always been aligned with the SPA4 and has always been included. And from the version 1, the version 2, and since basically 6-7 years, the action group, even before this joint work, is working with CERISE exactly to steer this dimension, both in being updated. We developed together the manual to fill the Green Index, for example, and of course now we're working as part, of course, of this group with CERISE, of course, as well, to analyze the data, the learn, and of course to compare the learning from the green dimension to all the learning that CERISE is clearly highly contributing for the social dimension. Yeah, sorry if I was not, but it was involved. It's a clear, active group member since 7 years, and will be one of the main collaborators from the action group so far on this topic. Sorry for that.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Geert Schuiten, and I'm working with David and Jürgen and other people from European Microfinance Platform and SPTF as a consultant on this work on defining Dimension 7. I'm a consultant at Palladium in the Netherlands, so I'm based here in Utrecht in the Netherlands. What we are doing at the moment, and I'll just tell you where we are, and then afterwards, I think reaching out to Davide, myself, or Jürgen, or anybody you can do that. You can participate in the training that's after this session. But if you want to be engaged, or if you have something to add to what it is that we are telling you, then please reach out to us. So what we are doing is that we are, as Jürgen said, first of all, trying to align ourselves with the current trends, international trends around sustainable and responsible finance. So we look, for instance, at EU taxonomy. We look at the UNEP-FI, AFI, the GIN, the impact investing sector. There's a lot of current development around green and inclusive finance, green and responsible finance in the mainstream financial sector, and we are trying to learn from that. Also, the Global Alliance of Banking on Value, FMO, the DFIs, of course, the Equator Principles and IFC, GRI, and so on. So that's the first, let's say, bulk of information that we are trying to capture and use. And we are also having discussions and interviews with a lot of practitioners and front runners, experts in the sector. And of course, last year there was the EMF award, the European Microfinance Award on strengthening resilience to climate change. That's also a very important source of information. All the FSPs that worked on that award, like Jürgen already said, CERISE and the Action Group is developing a lot of data and information and research. And of course, we have the universal standards themselves that are already addressing to a certain extent green. And if we look at that mainstream guideline, those mainstream guidelines, what you see there is that they have often, as part of their ESG, environmental and social governance strategy, a focus on exclusion of certain activities and risk categorization, high, medium, low risk. That's the do no harm approach that most financial institutions use. And then these guidelines are focusing on how to finance green initiatives, like renewable energy. Some of the examples that David just mentioned, circular economy, waste management, water, and carbon footprint measurement is also an important element that financial institutions are working on and reporting with GRI and other reporting initiatives. So that's what we've learned. That's what we're learning from looking at the mainstream sector. But as David mentioned, in the inclusive financial sector, if we follow the climate protection and vulnerability, that's already being addressed in SPM. That means that we have to start addressing vulnerability and resilience of clients first. Their resilience or vulnerability to climate-induced shocks or biodiversity loss or environmental degradation, those are, I think, or we think, things that need to be put first, and then we do the other stuff. So at the moment, this is the state of the current, let's say, draft or pre-draft version of the 7th dimension, is that we talk about an environmental strategy that we will probably integrate into other dimensions that are talking about standard or policies on social performance. We want to integrate it with environmental strategy and objectives. So that's dimension 1. But the true dimension 7 will probably start with a standard to evaluate the vulnerability of clients first, and also look at risks clients are having on the environment. But that's front and center of our approach, different a little bit than the green index. But so we are looking at maybe changing the order a little bit in the current green index. And then we have, so after knowing the vulnerability and risk of clients, we have the standard to offer products and services, as Davide mentioned, to improve resiliency and reduce impact. So that's a group of standards or best practices, and then at the third level, we look at ecological footprint of the organization. So what is the organization's own impact on the environment that we have to, but that's not the first topic. The first topic is vulnerability. And then we have issues like reporting and governance, but they will also become part of other elements that are already covered under the universal standards or the new standards under standard 2 or 6. So at the moment, we are narrowing down to the level of indicators. And once we have agreed with our steering committee and within the task force, so with the people that are here at the table on what indicators and how this should look like, then we are handing over back to the social performance task force, and then they will put that into the rest of the process on public inputs and so on. But that's where I'm at this moment. That's where we are now. So this is a very quick, high-level update on what we are doing with universal standards so far. Thanks, Jürgen.
Thanks very much, Gert-Jan and Davide. Also, there are a couple of comments in the chat box, and one specific question I think that came from Hans Ram about the fact that the standards not only apply for inclusive finance but banks. I hope that the description that we just provided shows that that's exactly what we try to do in this process. Is integrating the learning from a larger financial sector that has done an incredible amount of work over the past years in terms of defining concepts and definitions and taxonomy for responsible financial services, to integrate that, because we know that we are not a sector apart. Yet we have to also make sure that what we are proposing as a standard for inclusive finance remains something that's applicable to the type of organizations which constitute our sector. So I hope that what we did in a short session, at least, responded to that answers to that question about the larger financial sector. There are a couple of other important elements also in the chat box. CERISE provided some links. Please have a look at that, on where you can find information on the Green Index, but also on the ongoing works. I don't know, Davide or Gert, if there are other questions that you see in the comments that you want to specifically react to.
Yeah, there is a remark on setting the bar specifically when looking at the external impact. A lot can change whether we are assessing a microfinance institution compared to an institution financing SMEs. Indeed. So I think this has been addressed already in the answer by Jürgen, but we are trying to develop and design this in a way that is flexible enough to cater to these different situations.
Another word maybe also to say, the rationale for us doing this work together with the action group is clearly that what we want to achieve is that at the end, the green dimension and the green index have the same structure, are the same tools in reality, because we believe that there's a lot of complementarity of what the action group has been doing so far and continues to do in terms of training and data analysis, etc., with what SPI and CERISE and SPTF will do in the future. Where SPTF has always focused on the implementation and on the improvement. That's what underlines the implementation of the universal standards. And of course, this will also apply to what we are proposing as a green dimension in the future, which will come with an updated audit guide and all the information on supporting organizations how to implement an environmental oriented financial services, in addition to what we have already done for a long time with, as that you well know, on the social focus of that. We are at the end of the session. I think what I can say is it was a short session, really just to provide you an overview, to inform you on this ongoing work. You can reach out, of course, to Cecile, to myself, to Gert, to Davide, Gert-Jan, to the action group with any questions. If you want to share specific practical experience on working on the environment in your organizations, whether it's an investor or a network, please reach out to us. This is still work in progress, and we will certainly by the end of the year propose a structure for the Green Index and the Dimension 7 that will be tested and checked with the market before this is finalized, and hopefully in the future fully integrated into a responsible evaluation of financial services. In the interest of time, I think I'll close here, and I thank you, Gert and Davide. Thanks for everybody who has been on the session.
Thanks.
And again, please reach out to us for any comments or additional questions that we were not able to treat in such a short session. And have a great day.
And join us all to the green trainings if you're interested to know more. Just starting now on another link.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I'm just taking